Very good morning, everybody. It's been Friday morning. Yes, it's the happiest day of the week. If you are 925, anyhow, beautiful day in Johannesburg. It's been a very busy news week, a lot happening, Elvis. And of course, the big talking points are around how our public officials are behaving. Of course, we saw that our Deputy Higher Education Minister in the crosshairs a little bit.
In the crosshairs in court yesterday, Eben, and of course a lot of people are talking about he's not being arrested in time, not the day after or the day thereafter. It was 4 days since the event that happened, the assault on the two women, and there was no arrest, and that's why we're asking a question on the poll, Kendall.
We want to find out from you, what do you think about this matter? Did the Higher Education Deputy Minister, Mduduzi Manana, get preferential treatment?
Yeah, that's the discussion point all over social media. You guys are voting. 288 votes in, guys, and 80% say yes, he got preferential treatment. Elvis, should he have been arrested is the question, I think.
Well, 20%, as you can say, is saying no. Now, the Minister of Police for Kilimbalula, he says the Deputy Minister will not be treated with kid gloves. Well, we need to see if that is really what the viewers are thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got Gutalo Rudi Ntanga coming in saying Police Minister is just a speaking person to this case of Manana. No practical, a criminal must be treated as all South African criminals.
Interesting. Onuka comes to us. He says, how else should he have been treated? It depends on the real gist of the nightclub story. Interesting.
Rasenga says, treated as if he never committed a crime. But hey, it's a way of being recognized in the ruling party. You have to serve jail term for good recognition.
that's a little bit from yesteryear. Anyhow, we escalated because we don't want to make it about the Deputy Minister today. We want to talk about the conduct of our high-ranking officials. We've seen reports in the past, and we've had some complaints of members of the VIP protection that they are treated rather shabbily by members of Parliament and other office bearers. That's why we put the question forward.
People have to wait until 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning for a minister or a deputy minister before they can come out of the club, before they can go home. That's 12 hours over there.
Sometimes go straight into the next shift.
Exactly. So that's why we're asking that question. We'd like to find out from you. What do you make of that? And this one coming in from Remiochi says, who are they without ordinary citizens?
That's a fair question. Onuka Christian comes in with today's lawmakers are tomorrow's ordinary citizens. Every human should have high ethics.
That's the higher road. And okay, this one from Lenny Taxi says, no, including the president, no one should be above the law. We should be like Brazil and send the corrupt to jail. Well, keep tweeting us on our question of the day, of course. We want you to tell us. And shortly we'll be doing an interview with a very, very interesting man who's going to give us unique insight into this. But of course, Wade just came up 0.002 seconds short last night.
Yeah, absolutely. He just beat number 3 into 3rd place and got himself a silver at the World Championships. Wade van Niekerk going for the double at the IWF World Championships. Just missed it. And you know what? We're going to find out from you. After getting that gold earlier in the week, and this silver, what do you make of his performances at these championships?
I think he is a legend. 6 races in 6 days. You know, the recovery is not as simple as just waking up the next day. So here are your tweets, guys. Let's have a look what you guys say about the wonderful Wade van Niekerk.
Now, Katlejo says it's outstanding, superb, magnificent, exceptional. He gave his all. I'm very happy. Now, he has got a bright future ahead of him.
And then we've got Michael Murban. It says, congrats to Wade. He's performed fantastically well. He makes us proud.
No doubt. This one from the bigger Michael Sitoli. He says, he did exceptionally well in the 400 meters, but I think he needs some serious improvement in the 200 meters. But he will work on that. Michael, it's tough to run a race every day for 6 days in a row. I think the fact that he won the silver medal is a credit to his incredible performances. Anyhow, there's a lot for us to get through today, Elvis. We've got some very interesting stuff coming up, but let's first deal with the news, right?
Let's get there. The nephew of the late struggle icon and former Justice Minister Dalla Omar has reportedly been shot and killed in an apparent attempted hijacking incident in Cape Town last night. Ratings agency Moody's will again announce a review of South Africa's credit rating today. And the President Jacob Zuma is this morning expected to host the Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf for a state visit, an official state visit to South Africa. Now we'll go to that event a little bit later, so you'll have to stay tuned. But right now, before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamata what's happening on the track.
Now, quite a lot happening on the track. It's been an amazing couple of days at the IWF World Championships, and nobody's done it better than Wade. I think this man has just stood out as somebody to look up to for all young athletes who want to become great in their own way.
Yeah, South Africans need to recognize the fact that the guy is the best in the world.
Yeah, fully. And South Africans need to come in line with the rest of the world who know that he is. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
And now Van Niekerk trying to come through. It's really tight. Richards coming. Guliev and Van Niekerk. It's so close. Guliev.
Usain Bolt's heir apparent Wade Van Niekerk steps up to claim the mantle as he storms to silver in the men's 200 meters, narrowly missing out on a rare double at the IWF Championships.
Van Niekerk has been given second place in exactly the same time as Richards. So by 200ths of a second, the great South African doesn't follow Michael Johnson's double. It's a brilliant performance for the silver, but Guliev somehow held his nerve as they all closed around him.
Prof. Du Plessis talks of one of the possible coaches to take over from Russell Domingo, England bowling coach Otis Gibson.
Because I don't know, I've never worked with him. Try and find out something at least about your possible new coach.
And speaking of coaches, our former Springbok captain Victor Matfield has been appointed as the Golden Lions Currie Cup forwards coach. All this in more detail, we've got you around about 10:40. Do stay with Elvis as he's got the news.
Always a question around Victor Matfield's involvement with the Lions, and there's the confirmation from Kendall Makamate. He will be back a little bit later with your sports news. Top story this hour, the nephew of the late struggle icon and former Justice Minister Dalla Omar has reportedly been shot and killed in an apparent attempted hijacking incident near Ottery in Cape Town last night. That incident allegedly occurred at the corner of Governor Mbeki and Jan Smuts Drive. Shahid Omar died on the scene. The family confirmed the incident but refused to speak to the media, asking for privacy and space for bereavement. Police spokesperson says that the victim was shot in the chest by unknown suspects. His mother was also in the vehicle. Ratings agency Moody's is today expected to announce a review of South Africa's credit rating. Economists expect Moody's to affirm the Baa3 rating for the country and to retain the negative outlook. The rating agency is expected to first assess the medium-term budget policy statement in October and possibly the outcome of the ANC elective conference in December in terms of economic policy direction before further ratings action is taken. Fitch and Standard & Poor's have downgraded South Africa's credit rating to junk status. Moody's still has South Africa one notch above junk. President Jacob Zuma is today expected to host Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf for a state visit to South Africa. The visit is said to boost the economic growth and cooperation between the two countries and will further contribute to strengthening intra-trade relations in the continent of Africa. South Africa and Liberia enjoy good diplomatic and political relations since the attainment of freedom and democracy in South Africa. The two countries have since signed a General Cooperation Agreement and the Memorandum of Understanding on Economic and Technical Cooperation. A little bit later in the program, we'll go live to the event where Liberia's president will visit South Africa. Now that's all happening in Pretoria, so you have to stay tuned. Now, lawyers for human rights say they are concerned that law enforcement agencies are continuing to give Higher Education Deputy Minister Mduduzi Manana preferential treatment. Manana is facing charges related to assaulting 2 women at her Johannesburg nightclub at the weekend. He appeared in the Randburg Magistrates Court yesterday and was released on 5,000 rand bail. Manana is reported to have been allowed to use the back entrance to avoid the media. He will be back in court on September the 13th.
This is a case that stirred the nation's emotions. A high-profile politician charged with assaulting a woman, ironically, during Women's Month. Caught on video. The man in the cap, seen slapping a woman at a top nightclub in Fourways, is believed to be the deputy minister himself. The 34-year-old arrived at this court through a back door, avoiding the heavy media presence.
The deputy minister handed himself over to the police at Douglasdale police station. He was then brought to court around 11 o'clock, where the docket was brought to the NPA, and the senior public prosecutor of Randburg Court then went through the contents of the docket in order to check if there is a prima facie case against the deputy minister.
Manana faces 2 counts of assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. Stringent bail conditions have been imposed. These include no contact with any of his alleged victims and witnesses. Rapang Alamu, SABC News in Randburg.
Meanwhile, the Police Minister Fikile Mbalula has defended the action of the police who failed to arrest the Deputy Minister of Higher Education, Mduduzi Manana, before his court appearance. Authorities say Manana handed himself over to police at the Douglasdale police station. This, while the office of the president remains tight-lipped about the deputy minister's fate, rather.
Police Minister Fikile Mbalula wants the law to take its course, even if it's against his colleague and friend Mduduzi Manana.
And I can assure you that Deputy Minister Mdu Manana will not be treated with special kid gloves, and then will face the full wrath of the law in relation to the reported crimes.
Mbalula, however, refused to be drawn into whether his colleague should be suspended or even dismissed now that he has been charged and granted bail of 5,000 rand.
The question which relate to anybody in that position, it's a matter that will be responded to by the presidency. I can't respond to that.
The office of the president could not be reached for comment. Lukhanyo Khalada, SABC News, Parliament.
Now, President Zuma is expected today to host the Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf for a state visit to South Africa. For more on that story, we now cross live to the Union Buildings in Pretoria, where the 2 presidents are expected to meet. And there is Lehana Tsotetsi to talk to us about that. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome. Lehana.
A very good morning to you, and we welcome you to the Union Building, where there will be a state visit shortly. This will be President of Liberia, who is visiting South Africa. This is on a state visit. But I must also say that this state visit comes after South Africa's relations with Liberia have actually gone a bit further than what it used to be during the presidency of presidents like Charles Taylor, who left Liberia, who's currently is in jail after being arrested following the atrocities that took place in that country. But the current president, Ellen Joseph Sirleaf, was actually the one who actually uplifted Liberia from what it is and turned the situation around. But with me to tell us more about the situation and actually the state visit itself, what it entails, is the professor Dr. Ngulunga, who's in the presidency. Doctor, just to give us a brief synopsis of the state visit itself?
Well, I mean, this is a historic state visit. As you know, the president of Liberia is the first female president in the African continent. She has been elected twice. This is the final days of her last term in office. So this visit, President Zuma thought she should come in August because this is a Women's Month in South Africa to celebrate her achievement and the achievement that have been made in the African continent, including South Africa, in promoting women's rights and making sure that women participate in all levels of society. And in her case, she has really occupied the highest, most position in Liberia, and she has been participating in all the structures of the African continent, especially the AU. You remember that the relations between South Africa and Liberia are long-standing. Former President Nelson Mandela went to Liberia in 1962 to seek support in the fight against apartheid in South Africa. We resumed our diplomatic relations in 1997, and they have grown in leaps and bounds since 1997. And so today, this historic visit by the president of Liberia is to strengthen diplomatic relations between the two countries, first and foremost. Especially in the economic sphere, there is an expectation that there will be a joint agreement to promote trade and investment that is going to be signed. There will also be an agreement signed to promote movement between Liberia and South Africa, especially of diplomats. There will be elections in Liberia, presidential and legislative elections in the next few months. There is an expectation that South Africa, through the Independent Electoral Commission, will provide assistance there. And so it is a very important visit. Just in the economic sphere, just to go back, I mean, the trade relations between the two countries support South Africa. So the discussions between the two presidents will look at what can be done to make sure that Liberia benefits more from its trade relations with South Africa. So it is a very important visit indeed.
I know there were other agreements signed, especially when you look in 2015, because both countries are rich in mineral resources. To what extent can South Africa use its expertise and skills to assist Liberia?
It's one of the most important areas because we export a lot of mineral resources to Liberia, but they do have also mineral resources. So it's one of the areas that through this joint agreement that I've spoken about on trade and investment is going to be looked at for South Africa to assist Liberia to move up the value chain, I mean, in making sure that they process their mineral resources. So it's one of the discussions, but there are also other areas in agriculture, for instance, because there is some support that we provide to Liberia. And so the two presidents will discuss what more can be done to make sure that we provide more support so that Liberia becomes economically sustainable. It also uses its resources to grow its own economy, but also to export to countries like South Africa, because the trade has to be two-way. It shouldn't benefit just one of the countries.
Are we also likely, like you mentioned earlier on, that we'll see the ease of the movement of people between the two countries?
Yes, indeed. As I have said, that the focus in the first instance through the agreement that is going to be reached today is the movement of diplomats. I mean, to make sure that it is. Then I'm sure there will be assessment down the line to see whether we cannot increase the scope so that Liberians and South Africans moving, it might be much easier to move between the two countries, because as I've said, the relations between these two countries are historic and they are warm, and we have to make sure that we deepen them.
Could this also be a chance for the president of Liberia to come and say goodbye as she'll be stepping down?
Indeed, I mean, it's one of the reasons also we have invited her, because President Zuma said it was very important that she visits South Africa before she leaves as president of Liberia. In a sense, it is to say goodbye, but I'm pretty sure that she will continue coming to South Africa visiting, but as the head of state, indeed, this is her final visit, state visit to South Africa, because she will be leaving in the next few months.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Just briefly, that's how Dr. Ngulunga puts it, and that's how the state visit is going to take place, because the current president will also be having an opportunity to discuss with the president of Liberia, of course, about other future endeavors that she will be having. But from me, it's back to the studio.
Thank you, Lahana. We'll go to the event live a little bit later. But today the focus is on something else. We are focusing on that poll, and we're asking you this question. We take a look at the Deputy Minister of Higher Education, Mduduzi Manana, and we want to know whether or not he got preferential treatment. Let's take a look at the numbers. 384 votes in. 82% of you in South Africa and around the continent of Africa are saying, yes, it did get preferential treatment. Only 18% say no. We'll take a look at your comments a little bit later. But right now, to start that conversation, it's over to Eben.
Thanks, Elvis. Very good morning to you. Now, usually, VIP Protection Unit members are seen as these powerful people who accompany powerful office bearers. But according to some reports this week, this isn't always the case. Office bearers stand accused of some of the following abuses. Some say hitting bodyguards with objects. And let's just have a look at some of these abuses, alleged abuses, I have to say, are assault, obliging VIP escorts to nightclubs, imposing unreasonable shifts and hours, not giving them any time off, and so forth. Long-distance drives are some of the others. Coerced errand running, forcing them to carry personal belongings. These are just some of the abuses. Now, of course, all of this came into sharp focus this week following the issues around the Deputy Higher Education Minister. Now, Police Minister Fikile Mbalula says that the Deputy Higher Education Minister, Mduduzi Manana, he's still receiving VIP police protection. This, of course, despite being charged with 2 counts of assault. The issue of VIP protection has been a contentious one recently. A number of VIP Protection Unit members say they are sometimes ill-treated at the hands of high-ranking office bearers. Some claim they, as you see, they're constantly expected to work these long hours, leaving nightclubs and even restaurants in the early hours of the morning. Now, today we're speaking to a VIP Protection Unit member who, for obvious reasons, has to remain anonymous. But we're going to call him Paul this morning. A very good morning to Paul, that is. Thank you for being with us. As you can see, protecting his identity, and we state that for obvious reasons. But he's going to put us in the picture as to what really happens within the unit. Very good morning to you, Paul. Just if I can ask you to set the scene by telling us about the overall working conditions within the unit. What does it look like at the moment?
Okay, thank you for giving me this opportunity, and the listeners. Initially, what is happening around the VIP protection, we are waking up normal hours. We hardly get rest, even to get lunch. At some instant, we don't get lunch because it will be breach of security when you leave the VIP alone and then you need to go and get lunch. But that is most of the things that are happening around the protection unit.
Now, I read this week, they say some of you guys have to accompany office bearers to nightclubs, to all hours in the morning. If you're out until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, are you expected to start the same time the next day?
It only depends what time the VIP needs you. But most of the things are happening. Even if you are at home, he may just call you just to come and take him to the shopping, or only to take his wife or his children, depending what kind of duty does he want to utilize you on.
So you guys are expected to, carry the shopping, carry the bags, that kind of thing?
Yes, we are expected to carry everything.
In this case where we've seen, of course, this week with the assault that happened at the Cubana Club with the Deputy Minister, how do you guys view that kind of incident when an office bearer becomes involved in altercations with the members of the public?
It is very difficult for us because you must know there is a main objective that you have to protect him under no circumstances. That is your duty. Then there's nothing that you can do. Yourself is to protect him. Whatever he's doing, you have to just maintain and go on protecting him.
And sometimes you may be asked to intervene with these people, I'm sure.
When his life it is at imminent danger, there's nothing, you have to intervene.
I've seen a long list of complaints that you guys have listed, and you've raised these concerns. The concerns that you've raised about taking ministers, for instance, on long-distance trips and carrying the bags, having to behave like personal assistants to them, late nights and all these kind of things. You've raised the concerns. Are they listening to the concerns that you guys are raising?
No, immediately when they become aware that you are the one who did report that scene, you will be off from the protection VIP. You will sit at home or you do some other job without going to protect the VIP. That is the problem that we are facing.
So you guys are living with constant threats of being taken off?
Exactly, is what is happening.
I don't want you to name any names because it's not going to do anyone any good, but just tell me about some of the worst offences that you know of, and even with some of your colleagues, that happen within the unit.
Yeah. Initially, we've been assaulted. It can be verbally or physically, but there's nothing that we can do because we initially looking forward to protect the VIP.
In conclusion, quickly, now you guys are unionized, you are with unions. You've been telling the unions about the problems and so forth. What are they saying and how is this thing going to be taken forward?
The union, you know what is the problem? The problem is that some of the things we don't report everything to our union. That is our problem because immediately when they become aware that you are the one who reported it, because you need to be a protector and then you like your job and then you don't want to stay in the office doing nothing because of there are certain hours that you accumulate working on a VIP. Because of that, and then we remain silent about some of the issues.
Paula, thank you for coming in today to come and share with us what must be very difficult. It's a scenario where you can't really talk too much about it, as you've just heard a first-hand account of some of the difficulties that they've encountered. Of course, you've seen this matter coming into the spotlight this week with the behavior of some of our office bearers and, well, some of the tasks that they are expected to perform while on the duty of protecting our senior office bearers here in South Africa. After a little break, we're going to talk to the union and we're going to talk to, well, the Ethics Committee in Parliament about these things and how do we make sense of it and what's the way forward. But before we do that, let's go to our social media pages. These social media pages, of course, the big hashtag that's not going away today is that of Nduduzi Manana, who appeared in court yesterday and he's facing 2 counts of assault with the intent to do grievous bodily harm. He was granted 5,000 Rand bail yesterday, and of course Twitter is still abuzz with everyone's opinion on how this matter should be dealt with. Now also the freed Mali Al-Qaeda captive South Africa's Stephen McGowan spoke for the first time yesterday at a media briefing. He told the masses that he missed freedom the most and converted to Islam out of choice, not out of force. According to the New York Times, Gift of the Givers paid 500 million Rand in ransom money for the release. But the founder of the foundation, Imtiaz Suleiman, has denied these claims. Now, all eyes, of course, were on Wade van Niekerk in Caster Semenya last night at the IAAF World Championships in London. A tearful Wade just missed the win, but brought in another silver medal for South Africa. That was in the 200-meter. The hashtag is, of course, Wade, and Caster Semenya makes it safely into the semi-finals after winning her first heat. You can interact with the hashtag Caster. Then, moving further afield in the US, a new disturbing trend is emerging. Remember the bucket challenge? Well, where you could get a bucket of cold water thrown over your head? Well, now there's a hot water challenge. Several children have been admitted to hospital for 2nd and 3rd degree burns, as one child has died. Children between the ages of 8 and 13 are the ones playing this prank at sleepovers. Now, parents, please warn your children about the dangers of this hot water challenge. Then Saudi Arabian artist Abdullah Al-Shahani was arrested after dabbing at a concert. Authorities arrested him due to this dance move as it apparently symbolizes narcotic culture. He's since apologized to the government and his audience. The hashtag there is Saudi Arabia. Time now for us to take a look at our pick of the day, the picture of the day. Now, this one comes from Gladstone. It's a little bit, they feel a little bit different in the light of World Lion Day that took place yesterday. Now, this image is captioned, one of our bigger ancestors. On World Lion Day, these animals need more protection before we lose them, and banning trophy hunting is one way. That's looking at World Lion Day. Now for our comment of the day, this one comes from Don King, aka Jermaine HK, who says, Wade, you beauty. Against all odds, 6 races in 6 days and you still get silver in the 200 meters. South Africa, give it up for the best we have to offer. That's no doubt the best the world has to offer. That's Wade van Niekerk. Now, let's go to the courts quickly. In Bloemfontein, where the trial of a couple accused of selling their 11-year-old daughter for sex is being heard in the Free State High Court. Now the couple is facing 13 charges of rape, sexual exploitation of children, child abuse, etc. The 11-year-old daughter was allegedly gang raped by 3 men while her mother held her down and forced her 9-year-old brother to watch. The couple were arrested in 2015. Then in the Northwest, judgment on a bail application against 4 suspects arrested in connection with the kidnapping of an 80-year-old Mahikeng businessman is expected to be handed down today by the Molopo Magistrates Court there in the Northwest. Lebogang Lefifi and 3 alleged accomplices are accused of kidnapping Muhammad Musa on arrival at his home in Gulfview section near Mahikeng last month. We'll keep you updated on these cases and more as they develop. Now, on Monday, we're focusing on transformation in the farming communities. This in light of the coffin case and what's happening in Kalini, in the Western Cape, everywhere it seems, issues within the farming community. We'll speak to a range of stakeholders about why the abuses continue. Don't miss that on Monday. After the break, we'll continue talking about, well, office bearers abusing their power. Don't miss it.
Have a funeral policy.
No matter the sacrifices you've made or the hours you've worked, you can't always say yes, even when you really want to. Avbob's Cashback Funeral Plan not only provides funeral insurance for your family, but also helps you to say yes to life's little extras more often. Because for every 5 claim-free years, you'll get an entire year's premiums based on your monthly premium value paid back in cash. Say yes to more of life's little extras. SMS cash to 41790 and we'll call you. Avbob, we're here for you.
SMS cash to 41790 and Avbob will contact you.
What guides us? What leads us forward? Is it the words of our sacred texts? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
Welcome back. Now, just before the break, Eben interviewed an anonymous VIP bodyguard talking to us about the abuse that VIP protection units face within their units and their members, of course, and that's what we want to focus on this morning. Joining us now in studio is Peter Ntsimi. He is the Gauteng Deputy Chairperson of the South African Police Union. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, you heard the employment conditions that some of the VIP protection services are going through, even menial menial tasks like picking up the spouses and doing shopping and carrying bags for them. These are the things that they are going through. As a union, SAPU, what do you make of all of this?
Look, what is important is that we know the working conditions that these members are working on. They've raised it with us. The challenge is that in most cases, because of victimization that is happening within that environment, members don't want to come forth to explain to the union what is happening there. We highlighted also by the media about this working condition and what these VIP protectors said before. We can confirm to you that we have engaged management of the South African Police Service about these working conditions. A very simple example is long working hours. They must work within the confines of the law, 45 hours a week, but they are working more than 100 hours of overtime, and they are only paid only 100 hours overtime. In other words, there is a maximum of 100 hours that they can work for overtime, even if they work more than 200 hours a month.
They won't get the other 100. They
only get 100. And this is some of the working conditions that they find themselves working on.
The type of services that the bodyguard was describing, are these type of services part and parcel of their employment contract?
No. Their job is a very simple job. It's just to protect the VIP. You got your inner and outer circle. The bodyguard have to make sure that the VIP is at all time protected. That is the job that they have to do. But
and when we say at all times, does it mean 24 hours a day, or does it mean from 8 to 8, or 8 to 5,
no,
whatever?
As long as the VIP is on duty doing the work. So in other words, it does not specifically say 8 to 8 or 8 to 4. But you need to understand that when that person is on duty, the bodyguard have to be on duty with the VIP at the specific time. But if the VIP is not doing the job, like for example in a case where he goes to a pub or nightclub, the bodyguard's work is to protect that VIP. Now they are forced to go with the VIP, to be in that place with the VIP, even if that person is not doing what you call, a job that must be done by the VIP himself.
What is being done about that, and how do you as the union then protect and safeguard the VIP protection members?
We have bilaterals with the management of the police. We have engaged the management of the police about this matter. The challenge is when these members raise concern, you find the challenge that if there is a concern with the union and the management find out who is this member, the member is then relieved from being the bodyguard or the protector of the VIP. Now it's very difficult for them because the police are not getting paid enough. So the very same 100 hours that they are getting for overtime, they are relying on it. So if you complain, then you are told that you can go back and work in the office. So somebody will do the job. So it's a very difficult thing because members don't want to come forward to say this is the situation that we find ourselves in, because they have to be with the bodyguard all the time. If you have a complaint, then you have to work inside or you have to do administration inside.
Now you say you're having bilaterals, with the employer, but it seems like your pleas have fallen on deaf ears. So what are you doing about that, and how do you go about resolving the issues that bodyguards have got?
Yeah. We will make sure that we take this matter within the SABC now, because now we have to get information from the bodyguard themselves to say what is happening, what are the working conditions, because it's very, very clear that when bodyguards have to work, they have to protect the VIP, work within the hours that are there. If it's anything that is overtime, there is an agreement on overtime that we sign with the employer to say, if you work overtime, you must be paid for that overtime. It must be agreed upon. Anything beyond that, then the member must be given due time or rest days. But unfortunately in this case, if that person goes on rest days, it's like forever. You have to go on administration. But we'll make sure that we go to the Safety and Security Sectoral Bargaining Council, engage with the management in a platform where now they have to agree with us the working condition of these bodyguards.
Are these isolated incidences, or is it common throughout the VIP protection services?
It depends on the report that we're receiving. You had other bodyguards that will tell you that the VIP that I'm protecting it knows, they understand the rules of law. He will always tell me that, look, I have to be this at this time. This is my schedule. But you also have those who will tell you that the VIP I'm protecting is very abusive. I have to carry the handbag, for example. And if I refuse to do that, I inform my commander, because remember, in terms of line of command, they will first inform the commander. And the commander who is in the police is afraid to tell a minister or a person, a VIP, to say, but what you are doing is wrong. So you find that it's very difficult for this bodyguard to say, who am I going to complain to? When they come to the union, we have to engage to say, who are the people whom we are complaining about? And that's where now the identity of this bodyguard is now being revealed. So it becomes a very complex situation to deal with that matter.
I guess what I'm trying to ask is, out of, say, 100 bodyguards that's there, how many of those complaints do you get from them?
Like I'm saying, it's a very difficult one.
Is it 10%?
Yeah, it might be more than 10%. It might be more than 10% because, let's give the example in terms of the working hours. Working hours, all of them. If more than 90% of this bodyguard are working more than 200 hours a month. It's a fact, it's given because they've proven to us to say we're working extra hours, but we're only paid 100 hours. You cannot go beyond 100 hours.
Mr. Nsimi, that is the case of the bodyguards, but there's also another strike happening currently. The 10111 strike is ongoing. What is the latest in relation to that particular strike?
We are engaging on the strike. It is very clear that the SAPS now, they are feeling the pinch. We wanted to engage with them today. They don't want to come on board. Members are currently on strike. From here, I'm going to meet the 10111 Center myself. We're going to address members. We hope that the management will come on board and try to engage with us regarding this matter. But it's very clear that we're dealing with arrogant management in the police, those who don't want to listen to the pleas of these members, even if when we have given them everything that they need to prove that really these members deserve this level 7.
Are you confident that you might reach an agreement by today?
It might not be today, but we are confident that with the case that we are having, the study that we are having, case study that we are having, management have no choice but at least to listen to the plea of members or employees.
We were told by the SAPS that there's a standoff because the CCMA person that's leading the CCMA is not available until the end of the month, and you are not patient enough to wait until that time. Your response?
That is not the case. The CCMA have commissioners. If the commissioner is not available, there will always be another commissioner who can deal with the matter. Police management don't want to come on board to engage with us on this matter. We have made sure that we've given them our time. Our leaders in the union have said at any time we are available to engage on the matter. We view this matter of members of 10111 as a very serious matter, but it's very clear to them it's not a serious matter. They don't want to engage with us on this matter.
Mr. Nsimi, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
Thank you very much, sir.
That was Peter Nsimi, the Gauteng Deputy Chairperson of the South African Police Union. And of course, we're asking you that question today. We'd like to get your thoughts around the issue that we are raising here. We're talking about ethical behavior by MPs. This one from Lemmy Tux says, no, including the president, no one should be above the law. We should be like Brazil and send the corrupt to jail. So says Lemmy Tux. Rusenga Sharif says, I think the ANC Women's League will agree with you on this one, that MPs should be held, they should have ethical standards, I think he wanted to say. Why is the ANC Women's President so quiet about this one? And that's in relation to the Deputy Minister, of course, his case currently underway. Let's now take a look at the front pages from around the globe, and we start off in Australia, where the Australian reports that the threats of military action traded by the US President Donald Trump and North Korean state media this week drew appeals for restraint from China's foreign ministry, as government news outlets warned that such rhetoric would make things worse and urged Washington and Pyongyang to return to reason. Moving now to China, and the South China Morning Post says a former member of Hong Kong's Executive Council, which advises the city's leader on policy, was arrested and taken to court on Thursday to face charges over allegations of misleading the financial markets watchdog and cheating a company out of 30 million Hong Kong dollars. And finally, in Israel, the Jerusalem Post reports that a military offensive targeting the capital of the Islamic State's self-declared caliphate is paying dividends, with Brett McCurkin. Now, the U.S. Special Envoy for the Coalition Against the Islamic State revealed that about 45% of Raqqa has been recaptured. Those are the newspapers from around the globe. Keep them coming. We'll read them a little bit later, some more of those. But let's now take a break, and we'll be right back after that to talk about ethical behavior of ministers of Parliament. Let's go over to Eben to start that conversation. Now, well, we'll first take a break and we'll go there afterwards.
leads us? Is it something you can touch, hear, feel, or see? What leads us on to greater experiences? Is it leaders on a soapbox, spouting rhetoric for the crowd? The advice of our elders? Or is it the actions of our people? The strength of our beliefs? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News. Now this week, the Minister of Women, Susan Chabangu, used Women's Day to point fingers at some cabinet ministers who've been exposed about their bad behavior towards especially women. Now speaking at the official Women's Day celebration in Kimberley, she fingered the Deputy Minister of Higher Education, Mr. Mduduzi Manana, and said that he should be held accountable for his actions. Now, however, he's not the first or the only office bearer to be in hot water regarding questionable behavior in public. And we need to mention that he is innocent until the courts of this country rule otherwise. So let's not prejudge it. But in general, what sanctions should be meted out to office bearers who are found wanting when it comes to public behavior? Now, to discuss this, well, we're fortunate to have the right person, the co-chairperson of Parliament's Joint Committee on Ethics, Mr. Amos Masondo, is with us this morning. Very good morning to you, sir.
Morning to you and all the viewers.
The first question I want to ask you is the conduct of our office bearers here in South Africa. It should be beyond reproach, isn't it? But is it?
Well, that's the standard, really, that all of us must behave in a manner that is in keeping with the Constitution, with the relevant legislation, as well as with the code of conduct. So that's the standard, that all of us must do everything to do what the law says we should do, what the code says we should do, and do nothing that undermines that.
I want to talk about the specific case, of course, the one that's been in the headlines this whole week, and it's Women's Month, and it's been Women's Day, and some of our parliamentarians have spoken openly about it. Of course, we can't prejudge the case of Deputy Minister Mduduzi Manana, but how do you view, as the Ethics Committee, how do you view ministers being in nightclubs at all hours of the morning, engaging in what some would call questioning behavior, never mind the case of assault?
Now, I guess what is important is we should always endeavor to do the correct thing. And by correct thing, as I've indicated, it's really the law of the land and the code that we've all agreed to. So the question of people straying, which will happen from time to time, as it happens anywhere elsewhere in the world, need to be managed in a way that ensures that as we deal with issues of discipline, we are seen to be fair.
Yeah.
We are seen to be fair, and we are seen to be consistent. So this is what in the committee we try to do all the time.
Are our office bearers and our leaders, are they expected to behave in a manner that sets an example to the public and especially young people in South Africa?
Yeah, well, leadership has got to be carried out in a way that suggests integrity, that suggests honesty, that suggests that we strive to be role models.
We all make mistakes. It's human to make mistakes, and we all occasionally step out of line. I myself have made mistakes in my time. When you step out of line as an office bearer, a member of parliament, and you become accountable, what is that process of accountability that you have, and how do you then help these leaders to, I don't know, to find the right way?
Our approach really is that of seeking to avoid coming across as being punitive and coming across as seeking to persecute members of parliament. We try the best to ensure that we guide members, we advise them, and that we arrive at a situation where all of us are of one mind in terms of what needs to be done and in terms of really doing the work that we're supposed to do.
If you are a serial offender, if you're seen as somebody who breaches the ethical code regularly, what do you then do?
Well, there are people who become serial offenders, but they're not that many, and it's not that common. But clearly, if people step out of line and show a tendency to do so continuously, then they need to be dealt with in a way that ensures that action that is taken is seen as being fair, but firm. Firm to send messages, or a clear message to all concerned that indeed wayward behavior will not be tolerated.
Now, Mr. Masonda, our nation is becoming younger, and constantly they're out there calling for younger leaders, but with younger leaders come younger behavior. How do you manage this balancing act between younger leaders and younger behavior, because younger men and women are going to be maybe out a little bit later and have younger friends and engage in younger behavior, if we can call it that?
I don't want to speak in absolute terms and suggest that all young people are bad, or all older people are not suitable for this or that position. But we have to ensure, as you are correctly pointing out, indirectly, that there is a balance. And that balance is really to ensure that while the exuberance and energy of youth is acknowledged, but that it is also somewhat contained, but not in a way that seeks to stifle, to control, and to suppress. And we need to really ensure that happens, because if this energy, exuberance and energy is left unchecked, it can do a lot of damage.
And in today's world, in the social media world, everywhere is a camera. It makes it a little bit more difficult, I would think, to be an office bearer, because everything is in the media, isn't it?
Yeah, everything's out there within seconds. The story that happens in one particular location or area is spread across society, and indeed people generally have access to social media, etc.
In conclusion, sir, are you happy with the general example that our parliamentarians especially are setting to the public?
I think to be fair, the overwhelming majority of public representatives are doing the best they can. There's, however, strain, and that is public. And we need more renewal. We need more corrective measures to ensure that the situation becomes better than what it is at the moment.
Mr. Masonda, thank you very much for coming in today. I know it's a difficult job at times. I'm sure people make out like you were a policeman in Parliament, but that's not the case.
No, that's not the case.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us. This is Mr. Amos Masondo. He's the co-chairperson, of course, of the Joint Committee on Ethics, and everybody will know ethics should be beyond reproach, they tell us. If you're a member of Parliament, if you're a leader, even if you are a young leader, what do you guys think? You know, if you're younger, you should be allowed to engage in the things that younger people do. But, of course, everything within reason. We're going to leave that there, and we're going to talk about it again in the next hour. But, of course, at this time in the show, always we talk about sport and the great example that a young man is setting to the world, a very humble young man who is a leadership figure here in South Africa. And last night he won a silver medal, and you guys are saying, oh, he didn't get the gold. Kendall, what is wrong with us in that score? The guy is immense.
The guy is immense. He said he's done what he's done for athletics is exactly what Usain Bolt and the IWF were hoping that he would step up to do. He's purified athletics once again. He's made athletics the joie de vivre. He's brought it back into athletics where it's about running, it's about competing, it's about doing it to the best of your ability and doing it in a way that makes it open for everybody to come and look at you, critique your style, critique how you prepared, and look at you and think, you know what, this guy is clean.
Yeah, he's clean, and what I really like about him, he's almost a little bit different from Usain Bolt. Yeah. You know, Usain Bolt was the very flashy character. He was the guy that, you know, he does the moves and the things.
And still down to earth, though. I think the one thing that always stuck out and made him so endearing was that he was so down to earth. And that's exactly what Wade van Niekerk has got. The down to earth, next door neighbor's child kind of vibe.
Yeah, that's it. He's a human being above all else, and you know, I think a credit to South Africa, and we should really celebrate this guy because he comes around once in a generation. A guy with this kind of talent, with the humility, and of course, there you see it on screen. I mean,
what we spoke about?
That's what it's about.
It's about that. It's about actually receiving the accolades that he so justly deserves. He worked really hard for it, and he got it right. You know, we spoke about his recovery, whether he'd be able to recover in time to do well in the 200 meters. Even before we got to the championships, we talk about whether he was going to have the wherewithal to run the 400 and be competitive, and run the 200 and be competitive. And you know what? He got a gold in the 400 and a silver in the 200.
And 6 races in 6 days, no joke. You have to recover different conditions. You saw there, some days it's raining, some days warmer. It's really difficult to make sure that your body is in absolute peak form for that longer period. It's almost unheard of. But Kendall, that's where we leave it. We'll reopen at the top of the show. Don't forget to tweet us, guys. We'll get your tweets at the top of the hour when myself and Kendall comes back. Of course, we're counting down to the the official welcome for the Liberian president, Ellen Sirleaf Johnson, at the Union Buildings. We'll be there live shortly. These are live pictures coming from the capital at the Union Buildings.
Today on Rights and Recourse, we will unpack the new traditional court bill.
The idea of the bill is not to overregulate, to basically set the principles.
The most important aspect of this bill is that it understands that customary law, by its nature, is consensual. That I have a right to affiliate, I have a right, therefore, to opt in, and I have a right to opt out.
The opt-out provision is basically one that you've got to respect the court in the sense of, if you've been summoned, you've got to tell the clerk of the court at least that you're not willing to attend.
The challenge that I would like to throw to the Department of Justice, it has to come up with mechanisms of ensuring that people who exercise their right to opt out or to opt in are not in any way victimized.
Hashtag Rights with Dumila Mates on legal issues every Sunday at 2 o'clock Central African Time.
We take an in-depth look of all your stories of the day across the world.
Last month, Mkhwebane said that the bank had failed in its duties to protect the public by not ensuring that ABSA repaid an apartheid-era bailout given to the failed bank, Bank-Corp. The rand fell nearly 2% on her remarks.
My effort, in my opinion, is going to be to build a Zimbabwe that I believe in, as opposed to remaking a Zimbabwe of the past that I cannot do anyway. So I'm absolutely clear on this.
We need to start showing more commitment by government that they are committed to working with business, and therefore that should start to stimulate confidence, and with confidence comes investment, and with investment hopefully comes growth.
Stay tuned to Primetime News every day from 18 hours.
Welcome back. It's gone 10 o'clock Central African time. There we go. President Jacob Zuma is just, well, welcoming the Liberian President Alan Sirleaf Johnson at the Union Buildings.
Let's go there. Very shortly, we're going to go there live to see exactly what's going on there. It's one of those occasions that we cannot miss. It's one of those occasions that comes only once in a few years, and here it is, the first female president on the continent. Standing next to our president, Jacob Zuma.
Yeah, the only female president on the African continent at the moment. Ellen Sirleaf Johnson, of course, known for the great contribution that she's made in West African politics. Of course, key discussions there will be around issues of cooperation and trade. As we know, both countries, you must have heard it a little bit earlier, both countries are rich in minerals, and of course, cooperation agreements between South Africa and Liberia will be high on the agenda. We'll be there live shortly. As you can see, President Jacob Zuma extending the ultimate courtesy. But we'll carry on with normal programming for now until we go there live. Let's take a look at the poll. Of course, we're running a poll around, well, Mduduzi Manana has been in the news.
Quite a lot. In fact, just yesterday we had our president coming out to talk about exactly what the processes were going to be around Mduduzi Manana. But we want to find out from you. You've had lots of opinions on this matter, and we've been asking you, what do you think? Did the Deputy Minister of Higher Education, Mduduzi Manana, get preferential treatment?
Well, the vast majority of almost 500 voters are saying yes, more than 80%. And Nkutalo says the law of this country is performed with those who have no money and are not known.
Tepi says, why was he not taken in and charged and then appear in court?
Yeah, Tepi, that's a question I think that everyone is asking, and it should have been, some people say, well, it should have been made an example of, so as to give hope to other South Africans that nobody's above the law. Michael says no, because he appeared before the judge. Anyhow, let's leave it there, guys. Let's go to the Union Buildings now, because the President is about to start the official proceedings in the capital.
Thank you and welcome to the Union Building once more. The two heads of states have now arrived, and the ministers from both countries have actually come down as well, and the two heads of states are actually introducing each other to the members of the ministers. And there's President Jacob Zuma and the President of Liberia, President 21-gun salute. The two heads of states watching the guard of honor. President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, a Nobel laureate, and also an activist, though president. President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, going to inspect the guard of honor. I think it's also worth noting that President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf will be finishing her second term and she won't be standing for the re-election of the presidency during the coming elections in Liberia. She's well known for tough actions in her government. The Liberian president has actually set up a very good cemented ties between South Africa and Liberia, especially when one look at the recent relations between the two countries. Just in 2015, other bilateral relations were signed between the two countries, which included, among others, strengthening the political and economic ties. I was just saying that the relations between the two countries have really been cemented with both on the economic and the political side, and the trade is also one aspect which is being looked at between the two countries. As both countries, we've been told earlier on, they are very rich in mineral resources. South Africa is also in a position to help the Liberian country with skills and technology. The national anthem. Now is the time for President Zuma to introduce the Liberian president to the South African ministers. I was also saying that Liberia is a country which has come through a very difficult time. We'll all remember that at one point there were a lot of civil wars in Liberia. The worst was when the country was hit by the Ebola, which saw almost 11,000 Liberians perish through Ebola. And South Africa and other countries and members of the African Union, ECOWAS, IGAD, there were countries which also helped to ensure that they assist in fighting the dangerous disease that's known as Ebola. And the story, I must say, it was a success because eventually the country was declared free from Ebola. And it's a country which is currently working its way up economically, socially. We'll also remember that the Liberian president has actually worked very hard to try and assist and to try and improve relations of a country with other countries. There is still much to do in Liberia in terms of seeing that the country has a strong economy to be able to adjust from what it came out to. Hey, I'm busy now. President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf now introducing President Jacob Zuma to Liberian ministers and diplomats. The two heads of states have now introduced each other to their members of their ministers. And now what's going to happen now is that the two heads of states are going to have one-to-one, and then thereafter we might be invited for a media briefing. Ministers are now taking leave. That's now the end of the first session, whereby we had the guard of honor, the 21 gun salute, and we have both presidents introducing each other to each other countries' ministers. Now the two heads of states are going to have a one-to-one, and thereafter they will also be meeting and signing agreements. And later on they will call a briefing just to let us know about the outcome of the meeting. But for now, it's back to the studio.
Well, that's the official welcome to Liberian President Alan Sirleaf Johnson at the Union Buildings. We're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, we'll continue with normal matters here on the Newsroom show. Of course, today we're talking about, well, the conduct of office bearers here in South Africa. Don't miss it.
What guides us? What leads us forward? Is it leaders on a soapbox, spouting rhetoric for the crowd? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people. And your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
The Pan-African Parliament as a legislative body could go a long way in continuing to promote women's rights in all African member states.
Moon will be elected president. A decisive win by him will provide much-needed stability in South Korea.
The Deputy President and the SADC Oversight Committee have been mandated to convene a multi-stakeholder national dialogue before elections.
5 teams are trapped in the relegation mud. These include Bloemfontein Celtic, 12th on the log, followed by Chipa United, Free State Stars and Baroka, who are second from the bottom, as well as Highlands Park, who have won only 4 matches.
We're on point with breaking stories, detailed economy and sport. Tune into Midday Report every Monday to Friday from 12 p.m.
Welcome back. You're at Newsroom on SABC News. Now, the recent case of alleged assault by Deputy Higher Education Minister Mdudu Zimanana has once again shone the spotlight, of course, on the behaviour of public officials and public servants. Earlier this year, former Minister for Public Service and Administration told public servants that they must comply with the Public Service Code of Conduct and the Provisions Charter. His remarks followed a heated public debate involving a government spokesperson who made waves on social media when defending a minister who was being accused of being under the influence while addressing a public gathering. Now, to discuss the ethics and the conduct of public servants a little bit further, well, we are joined in studio by Lebogang Peko, who's a political economist. Very good morning to you. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
How should high-ranking government officials and public servants, for that matter, behave in the public space?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there are a few things. The one is what ethical leadership means, and it always is assumed that it's to do with a sense of justice, a sense of compassion, a sense of servanthood. But the most important thing as well is a sense of being exemplary, that there's some kind of a conduct which is consistent to their private lives and their own conduct, moral, their own, private moral universe.
Yeah.
And I think the important thing as well is that there's a normative idea of certain levels of behavior that we all socially think are acceptable. Yeah. So beating people up in car parks probably falls a bit out of that realm.
Well, short, one would think. Do we have enough of this kind of exemplary leadership that you talk about here in South Africa, or do we have too many patchy periods?
So the interesting thing is that in many countries, a public official who's found in some way to be lacking, have failed in the public domain, or even where their private life has been found to be somehow controversial, would normally instinctively resign. And what we find in South Africa is that more and more there's an attempt to justify, we go into rescue mode, so we want to rescue a person rather than holding them to account in a particular way. We either want to apologize on their behalf or we want to assume that it's not important enough, it will blow over. And of course, the common default is for somebody to say they are sorry on a public platform and assume that this somehow nullifies the wrongdoing that they have done.
Yeah, there's a lot of criticism for apology this week, mind you. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But let's talk about that incident quickly, because there's a lot of that happened. Of course, there was the incident itself that's on film, and some of the eyewitness accounts are even more harrowing than what we see on the video. Then there's the issue around the apology that you mentioned. But then the behavior of the police ministry afterwards. This person wasn't arrested. This person went straight to court, some people say, and of course they call it preferential all over social media. Just give me your overview on all these little markers along the way.
Bits and bobs. I think that there's a few things. I mean, there's sort of the red carpeting of public individuals is problematic, because it gives the impression that some are more equal than others, and that some are somehow should be cushioned from the consequences, however harsh this public fatigue that might come with it, and also even the career consequences that come with this sort of behavior. And I think that if we're trying to build some sort of an ethical universe that is commonly agreed upon by people across this country and even globally, it has been understanding that all of us are subject to a certain code of conduct, which all of us should be subjected to, no matter what the cost of that.
Do we understand ethics, though?
Yeah, so ethics is really to do with, the philosophy, moral philosophy. And when we speak about, ethics in the realm of political relations, it's a form of leadership which then implies that we are able to mediate social relations. So there's process ethics in terms of elections, in terms of how we spend money, in terms of public services accountability, service delivery. That's all part of ethics. There's the ethics of people, how people behave even in the workplace. So any public official, whether it's somebody who works at the post office, whether it is a doctor or a nurse at a government clinic, whether it's somebody at SARS or whatever, we expect them to behave in a particular way. But there's also the other form of ethics, which is the social interaction. And the two go together quite importantly, because if you don't have a sense of ethical leadership in relation to expenditure, in relation to overspending, in relation to, imposing your blue car cavalcade on the freeway because you didn't leave your meeting on time. I mean, that sort of sense of entitlement and the sense that, you know, you're subject to a different kind of accountability than other citizens. I think it makes it very difficult to take any form of high ground in terms of pronouncements. Now, important example, Tony Engeni at some point got into some sticky business in terms of, you know, corruption charges, spent a few days or weeks in jail.
The Mercedes-Benz incident.
Yes, exactly. The ML4, the, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And he then is recycled a few years later as the head of, as you know, part of the ANC Ethics Committee. And one just, it just boggles slightly, then where is the moral standing? And I think we've been seeing too many of these sorts of glitches and non-linear behavior within the ANC and across party lines, by the way.
You talked about abuse of power a little bit earlier, and I spoke to members of the VIP protection unit anonymously, and some of them, of course, have to carry shopping bags and all sorts of abuses of power that you
collect laundry, dry cleaning, etc.
All of the above. How do you change this kind of entitlement that you're talking about, or is it a scenario that we just have to deal with as the politics of the now?
Yeah, I think there's, you know, nobody's expecting anybody to walk on water. But I do think that these things can be well documented. I mean, there are codes of conduct which people can sign off on. And where there's a breach of that code of conduct, particularly in a very visible, public, visceral way, there should be particular sanctions which are immediately. In many countries, for example, an MP or a public official will be asked to refund money if it's been ill spent. An MP will be asked to compensate an employee if, for example, they are treated badly, and they'll be asked to pay them the overtime. And for example, in this instance, you know, we're led to believe that VIP special protection are out protecting somebody in their private time when they're at a nightclub. That's not state business. So a person might be asked to compensate them out of their own pocket for that, if they need that, or to hire their own, you know, after hours personnel. And I think there's just a lack of that. And I think that because we don't have something that's written, well, I think we do have something that's written down, but it isn't really followed. It gives rise to these very fluid and very relaxed and laxed and very entitled behaviors.
Is it okay for a minister, a leader of, especially in a education minister, to be out in nightclubs at 4 in the morning?
Look, I think adults will do what adults do. I think what's problematic for me is the conduct around that. And I think the other thing is the horrible lack of judgment. The other thing that's quite interesting is that it's interesting that he's part of the Ministry of Education, higher education. And, you know, the question of bullying in schools, bullying in institutions of higher education, campus rape, etc.,
gender issues in general.
You know, the whole thing of, you know, fees must fall, etc. You expect that a person of that level, if you're a bully in your private life, it's difficult to understand that how you're going to be able to, with any real conviction, because that's the other thing, is that if you as a leader, you don't believe inherently in the value system of the policies that you're rolling out, why should you be there?
Sanctions. I spoke to the Ethics Committee a little bit earlier, and it felt a little bit soft.
What was the response?
It felt a little bit more as if guidance is given instead of sanctions. Is it not that sanctions should be given instead of guidance, maybe a little bit more?
This goes back to your previous question. We can't have a discretionary approach to this. It's an approach that must be a zero tolerance on certain things. So if somebody steals, if somebody's abusive, if somebody abuses their staff, etc., etc., if somebody is involved in the kind of disgraceful fracas of this past week, there should be kind of, the one thing is the zero tolerance. The second thing is the consistency and the speed, because this is not just about those people. It's also about the public confidence in state organs, public confidence in public officials, and the notion that they serve us and we need to have faith in them. And if we no longer have faith in them, there has to be an illustration that the state and the party, in this instance, or the government, has an appreciation that they're here at the behest of us, we the people.
It's almost, I get a sense that in South Africa, we are being told that the public is more accepting of, I wouldn't call it unethical behavior, but yeah, along those lines. Elsewhere in the world, in the UK, for instance, if an MP is found to watch pornography on his phone, he has to step down immediately. In South Africa, if you get nude pictures on your phone or if you, all sorts of stuff like this, all you have to do is just say sorry.
If that, in some cases, request more pictures and, you know, if that. I mean, nothing, there's no particular sanction. And I think that it goes back again to the idea of leadership as part of, as being exemplary. Yeah, a point, and I think, you know, there's an old struggle tradition which says that the personal is political. And there's some schools of thought which would say that a person who lacks self-mastery in their private life, in their private conduct. Yes. You know, a person who abuses their spouse, who neglects their children, you know, who kicks dogs, you know, who's mean to their helper, who doesn't pay the people who work for them, who abuses them in any way. There's a feeling that this illustrates some kind of moral paucity, some kind of impoverishment, and some dissonance between what they are pronouncing. I mean, when we speak about Batupele, a better life for all, I mean, if it's a better life for all, then surely then we need to see that you begin with your own private conduct in being a person who is led by a particular ethical guideline. We talk about moral regeneration quite a lot in South Africa, and we talk about, of course, how this ties into things like social cohesion and all the programs that we run around gender violence and the like, and none of these things seem to be working because the numbers show that. Is it because of leadership? And is it that simple? It sometimes is and it sometimes isn't. I think the one thing is that we haven't necessarily populated moral regeneration with the sort of collective understanding that we need. At one point, President Zuma was the head of the moral regeneration movement or council in this country. And I think that at that particular moment, the symbolism of him as the head of it, when he was still the deputy president and before his own ongoing legal woes began, the symbolism of that was not wasted, and I think there was a point at which it was felt that really he did not signify the kind of moral fortitude, even the perception of wrongdoing, made him, you know, rendered his word in this really problematic. And I think that we've become so relaxed that even the perception of wrongdoing is seen to be something that can be treated with discretion, something that can be explained away, something that can be excused, rather than being something where there's a particular guideline and there's an agreed format of public behavior, which we all expect of each other. I mean, as you would expect of me, I would expect of you, would expect of each other. I mean, you'd expect from the person at Pick and Pay to, you know, to present themselves in a particular way. If somebody at Pick and Pay were rude to you, you go to the manager, they get a sanction, you know, you have a conversation, and oftentimes, I mean, I've gotten a phone call once or twice from the person, from the rude checkout person to say, I'm really sorry about that, I must apologize. Whereas with our public politics at the moment in this country, we don't get that. You get a kind of a grandstanding, you know, a grandstanding apology, often to some, you know, facing a camera, not even to the addressed to the person. And it goes across the board. I mean, remember the whole question of the University of Free State where there were those young students who then urinated on these women's, you know, etc. And at the time, there was a criticism of the then leader of the institution who accepted an apology from these boys, it was an outcry, which had not been presented properly to the women involved. And I think that that's a microcosm of the way which we practice rescue politics. It's like, oh, there, he was having a bad day, he was drunk, oh, tusk, tisk, tisk, and then that's it. It's not just one end of the political spectrum, though. It goes across it, and therein lies, I think, the conundrum we have to deal with as a country. Of course, we know the tweets around colonialism and what followed after that, and all these kinds of things. Collectively, what is the way forward for us as South Africa? Oh, gosh, I think that as citizens and as people who in the public domain, we need to continue to use these platforms to really make different demands and to demand better than what we're getting. I think that the Twitter campaigns and the Twitter movement has actually been helpful because it's a very immediate way of voicing discontent, and it's become a way more and more of issues, number one, being distributed really quickly, and number two, of people voicing their discontent.
Isn't that the death of real activism, though?
Look, I have argued that in some respects, but I also think that Twittervism should not be, Twittervism should not be entirely disqualified as a form of action. But it certainly cannot. We can't leave it to our thumbs.
It should be one element of activism
we can't
only.
leave it just to our thumbs. Yeah.
I'm very glad to hear that from you, because I have a real issue with what I call slacktivism on social media. Nowadays, you put up a picture and you say, I support the hungry, and that's it. And that's it. We have to move past all of that. But we're running a poll, and I just want to show you the numbers before you go. Of course, in this specific case, if we can just take off that super, there we go, guys. You see, these are the numbers. Now, of course, we ask the question every day we run a poll. Did the Deputy Minister of Higher Education get preferential treatment? Now, of course, 82% are saying yes, and of nearly 550 votes. So it gives a fair idea of how South Africans are thinking, right? What the sentiment is out there. Before we take a couple of tweets, I just want to talk about this. I want you to talk about it a little bit, because if I go out here and I slap somebody, and surely I must get arrested and then go to court. And the minister in this case didn't happen. That's the kind of messages that we should not be sending to the public, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there was a whole sort of quasi explanation around the vote of no confidence. He was needed in Parliament, etc., etc. But I think that there's no getting away from. He is not the first to experience this seeming red carpet. The red carpet ovation on his way into a legal process, and this in itself indicates that our legal processes are not even-handed, and that power and political power seems to play its hand over and above what basic processes should kick in.
Guys, let's have a look at those tweets. What are our viewers telling us? The Cool Hand tweeter says, even a blind fool can see that these so-called politicians are treated differently when it comes to the law. And this really is a sentiment that I think we should be concerned about, because it is a very prevalent sentiment out there, isn't it?
Well, I mean, also the way, the celebritization of bad behavior. So, I mean, I think Deputy Minister Manana is the latest. I mean, I think the whole, I mean, can go back to Tony Yengen, can go back to a lot of other public officials who seem to have been given given massages on their way into their processes. You
touched, you should be treated like any other criminal, full stop. I think that's a sentiment that people share. But you touched on the celebritization matter. And of course, the world's become obsessed with celebrities. But are our politicians starting to behave like celebrities and starting to think that they are celebrities a little bit?
I think it's a global phenomenon. I think that the power comes with a certain loss of perception of your relationship with the world around you, and with your relationship with accountability. And I think I'd be interested in this instance to see the extent to which party political accountability is able to take public sentiment into account and understand and appreciate that this is not seen as popularly acceptable. You know, this is not seen as popularly, this is not popular. This is going against everybody's ethical framing of how we should behave towards each other and respect each other accordingly.
We're also asking you the question, of course, that we put up, and you guys have been tweeting us. Let's take a look at some of the tweets. The question we're asking about the behavior. Should behavior of office bearers be beyond reproach? Actually, should members of Parliament be held to a higher ethical standard than us ordinary citizens? Now, what you got, I would say, of course there should be. I mean, that's the reason why you are leading us. Rich Dad Poor Kid says, lawmakers are human beings. They must club like all of us, but they must not assault women when they are drunk. Interesting. When leadership becomes a little bit younger, does that make more sense?
What do you mean?
Well, in South Africa, we are asking for younger people to be leaders.
Yeah, I understand. I get you now. Look, I think that people's private lives is theirs. I must say, I think I'm very wary of policing people, because that's then asking them to walk on water. But I do think that when your private life and your private conduct spills over, like as I said before, if you're beating your wife, if you're neglecting your children, if you're clubbing and you're losing control and beating people up in the car park, if it spills over into your public conduct and your public profile, certainly there's a problem.
Yep, unethical behavior is unethical behavior. Lebahang Peko is a political economist, and today gave us the total juice on what you should and should not be doing if you're a leader here in South Africa. Yeah, elsewhere in the world, it's a little bit tougher than it is here. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, Kendall Mahamata will give you a wrap as we get into what will be another busy sporting weekend.
Welcome back. My name is Kendall Makamate, and it's time for the sports. And as Eben said, we're looking forward to a massive sporting weekend. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about what happened last night, where Usain Bolt's heir apparent Wade van Niekerk stepped up to claim the mantle as he stormed to silver in the men's 200 meters, narrowly missing out on a rare double at the IWF Championships in London. Running 6 races in 6 days, South Africa's sprint sensation Van Niekerk got away with a gold and a silver, a haul worthy of Usain Bolt's successor in spirit and on the track. Let's have a look at the 200-meter he ran yesterday.
Cleanly away in this huge final. What an opportunity. Sonny Brown is trying to close down on Webb outside him. Makwala coming through here with Guliev on his inside. And now Van Niekerk trying to come through. It's really tight. Richards coming. Guliev and Van Niekerk. It's so close. Guliev is very, very tight. I think Guliev might well have just done it. Van Niekerk has been given second place in exactly the same time as Richards. So by 200ths of a second, the great South African doesn't follow Michael Johnson's double. It's a brilliant performance for the silver, but Guliev somehow held his nerve as they all closed around him.
And of course, there's been a myriad opinions on Wade van Niekerk's race and his performances. And some people think that he didn't take this race seriously. Some people think that he overstretched himself. Well, let's see what it is you're saying on Twitter about how Wade performed at the IWF World Championships this last week. First up, we've got Liesel saying, it's always a celebration when Wade runs. He's our boy. And they've got the South African flag and presumably waving in the background there. And there's more people taking screen grabs of the race itself. Kaya Koko says, that moment you realize what a special country this is. Yes, it is, isn't it? People like Wade van Niekerk remind us how special South Africa, Mzansi, really is. And if there are any more, definitely would love to share them with you a little later. Keep them coming. We really enjoy sharing your views with everybody else. Now, the South African national football team is putting the final touches to its preparations for the 2018 African Nations Championship qualifier against Zambia this weekend. The teams will clash in East London at the Buffalo City Stadium on Saturday, with kickoff scheduled for 3 p.m. Now, Bafana played to a goalless draw in East London earlier this year against Angola.
The home team is hard at work preparing for the much anticipated clash. This is the first leg of the Chen tie against Zambia. Bafana is going all out to win, but the coaching staff has found it difficult to put a side together. Coach Stuart Baxter says he had to improvise as local teams are preparing for the season, starting with MTN 8 this weekend.
We've had people come into camp and then leaving, and people that are on camp but they can't stay for the second game, and yeah, it's been, and I understand the clubs. I'm not criticising them. I'm just saying that this tournament at this time for South Africa is a very, very, very difficult one. So the boys that have been here have worked their socks off, so they're going to give whatever they can. But logistically, to answer your question, as a tournament, it's been the most difficult I've ever experienced.
Tickets are selling at 40 Rand, and the team is hoping for a full stadium of local support. The return leg will be played in Zambia next week. Olanisi Chinga, SABC News, East London.
And from one national team to another, the Proteas arrived back in the country after an extremely long tour of England, licking their wounds with nothing but an unsuccessful Champions Trophy campaign and then a 3-1 defeat in the Test Series to England to show for their efforts. This is not, of course, counting the T20s and the ODIs. Current England bowling coach Otis Gibson is earmarked to become the next coach of the Proteas. And Captain Faf du Plessis gave his opinions on what he knows about Gibson, and he also talked a little bit about life without A.B. de Villiers.
As far as we know, it's been told to us that the decision has been made by the coaching panel, and they've chosen Otis Gibson as their recommendation, and that now that goes to the board, and then the board decides whether they want to use that recommendation or not. So we don't know what's going on further than that. For me, it was important to try and, because I don't know Otis, I've never worked with him, try and find out something at least about your possible new coach. So I actually spoke to a few of the West Indian players because he was their coach there, and then spoke to the English guys about him being their bowling coach and their thoughts on him. Obviously, there was maybe one or two differences in opinion. But I think from a culture point of view, probably we are a little bit more closer to the English players, the way we play our cricket, than the West Indian culture would be. And the comments were positive. You know, I spoke to Ben Stokes, who I play with at Pune, and he said he's a really good bowling coach. Not sure what he will be like as a head coach, but he's a very, very good bowling coach. And other guy I spoke to was Ewan Morgan. Just from a captaincy point of view, how does he find working with him? And also he said he was really good and he was a good guy. And I think for a start, that's probably the most important thing, is that you appoint someone that's a really good person, because that's ideally what our culture is all about.
Yeah, I mean, I know Otis quite well. Played in England in some leagues where he was the pro as well, and obviously watched him quite closely how he's working with the England bowlers. I think, you know, different sort of skill set. I think if you look at the way the England bowlers are using the crease, different wrist positions, you know, that sort of things that is going to come to our camp now, and especially a lot of the youngsters and me, you know, can learn from that and benefit from that. As my personal sort of future, you know, look, I'm committed to the Proteas. And for me, that's the most important thing. I mean, we now are a little bit in a, if I can say, we use the word slump, and it's important for our senior players now to stick together and, you know, help the youngsters and help the team to get back to the spot with the public, and, you know, where everybody can be proud of us.
Whether we win or lose, people always want AB to play, and that's fair, because for me, he is the best player in the team. But I think we've played, I mean, probably a year and a half now of Test cricket where AB hasn't played, and I personally, like I said, I hope that he comes back and plays, but I am not expecting. I've almost sort of moved on and made sure that we can find someone else to fulfill that role, and that's why we're looking at guys who can fill that number 4 position. If AB was there, he could just basically put on the shoes and go straight into bat. But it's just for me to try and get it out there that people must expect that it's possibly not going to happen. We don't want to lie about it or anything. If AB's not coming back, then he's not coming back. But I can't make that answer for AB. The last time I spoke to AB, he wasn't keen to play yet again. So from my point of view, I'm just expecting him not to come back.
I'll tell you what, we're certainly hoping that whoever gets put in that post of taking over from Russell Domingo, if that is really going to happen, we hope that they get it right soon. We're playing Bangladesh in a Test series very soon. Now, former Springbok captain Victor Matfield has joined the Golden Lions Currie Cup team as a coach of the forwards. The Lions gain a wealth of experience in Matfield, the most capped Springbok of all time with 127 caps. The Lions bid farewell to coach Johan Ackerman after the Super Rugby final a fortnight ago, with assistant coach Swayze de Bruin taking the reins. Matfield has won 3 Currie Cups in his career, Super Rugby 3 times, the Tri-Nations twice, and won the World Cup in 2007. And there's a very jammed leaderboard at the final major of the year, the PGA Championship. It's taking place at Quail Hollow in North Carolina in the United States, and there are 15 players within 2 shots of the lead.
Thorbjorn Olesen has long been talked about as a possible future major winner, but hasn't quite lived up to expectations. But he says he feels ready. His birdie putt at the last put him into a share of the lead at 4 under par. He shares that with 2 Americans, D.A. Points and Kevin Kistner, who also birdied the last to go to 4 under par. Amongst the big names hoping to make a mark is Rory McIlroy, but a rocky showing midway through his round, including finishing in the water at the 14th, saw him finish with a 1 over par 72. Jordan Spieth could also only manage a 72 as he struggled with the greens. He's looking to become the youngest player ever to complete a career Grand Slam. There are a number of really good players at around that score, and they're not out of it yet. Spaniard John Rahm shot a 70, and few would be surprised to see him up front come Sunday. Dutchman Joost Luiten may not make the cut, having signed for a 76, but he will remember the round after acing the 4th, his 13th hole. Janet Witten, SABC News.
And that's where we leave it with the sport. Up next, we have a quick look to see what's happening with everything else around the world. But tell you what, before we even do that, we're going to go to the top of the hour and bring you more news and more analysis. You're watching Newsroom.
Right, welcome. Let's take a look at the weather for today. Of course, we're going to start with a cold front that's passing by South Africa's southwestern parts. For today, it's going to bring in quite a lot of rainfall to Cape Town and surrounding areas. Widespread showers expected there. It's also going to bring in cold conditions, and we'll take a look at those temperatures in a minute. But moving on into tomorrow, that's just going to extend those isolated showers through the eastern and southern coastlines of South Africa. And it is going to alleviate a little bit of the pressure on the western parts of the country, where we're just going to see some isolated showers. Now, as you can see, again, the rest of southern Africa remains almost completely clear, excepting, of course, parts of Mozambique, where we're expecting the possibility of just some isolated showers. Now, in conjunction with this low pressure system and the cold front, we do have some weather watches and warnings. A warning for conditions highly conducive to the spread of veld fires over South Africa's central interior is present, so be aware of that. But what we also have is a weather warning, and this is for a condition which might just bring in some gusting gale force winds up to about 65 to 70 kilometers per hour there. We do have 2 weather watches as well, the first being for high seas with swells between 6 and 7 meters along the southern and southwestern coastlines, and the second being for rainfall, which may lead to localized urban flooding around the Cape Town area and surrounding metropoles. So please be aware of that if you are in any of these areas, and plan your day accordingly. Now, in terms of your temperatures, well, Cape Town's only at a 14-degree maximum, as we said, expecting widespread showers and thunder showers. Ahead of that cold front, we're seeing temperatures up to about 24 in Port Elizabeth, 25 in Kumani, Durban at 30 degrees, a warm day in Bloemfontein at 26, and Pretoria 25. Now, moving on into the rest of Southern Africa, well, what we're seeing is nice warm conditions and sunny ones for the most part, as we saw on our map. Windhoek peaks at 26 degrees, sunshine there. Victoria Falls 27 with sunshine, and Harare at 23. Now, the rainfall starts around Beira at 26 degrees, but it's very isolated showers, just passing isolated light rainfall, should I say. Now, Victoria 29 degrees, it's expecting some showers and thunder showers. Lots of cloud cover there today as a result of low pressure system. Port Louis peaks at 25 degrees there in Mauritius, and as we take a look there, we're going to also see some rainfall. Dar es Salaam, Mombasa, some showers there, only isolated showers though. Juba is expecting heavier rainfall for today. It's about a 60% chance of showers with warm conditions despite all of this. And of course, as we move along into the northern hemisphere, we're going to see some very rainy conditions continuing all the way from the Ethiopian highlands through the northern parts of the Central African Republic and southern parts of Chad into Cameroon, and of course all the way through into Nigeria. That's a band of cloud cover and rainfall that's yielding some storms, so be aware of that. Moving moving on into tomorrow, we're going to see that continuing once again all the way throughout the same areas there, although this time Mauritania expecting quite a bit more rainfall. This, of course, is where we're going to leave your weather for now, but have yourself a great day.
Rights and recourse tackles constitutional issues.
When South Africa became a constitutional democracy, we had a fairly sound legal system in place requiring the Constitution to guide the direction in which it must go and the way in which it must be refashioned.
The Justice Ministry, the custodian of human rights.
We actually have a plan to come up with a comprehensive review of our human rights instrument.
Advocates dealing with evidence.
Sometimes you have to use a crook to catch a crook. So we expected that the credibility would really be taken to task. You try and consult your witnesses and prepare them as best as you can.
Hashtag Rights with Dumila Matez on legal issues every Sunday at 2 o'clock Central African Time.
Well, a very good morning and welcome to AM News live at 10:00 hours across all Central Africa regions.
A fitting send-off for a revolutionary giant, a life dedicated in service of the people.
The result means that the Swallows are out of the ABC Multiple League and drop to the amateur fourth tier of South African football, the SAB League.
Tune in on AM News every Saturday and Sunday from 10 hours.
What guides us? Is it something you can touch, hear, feel, or see? What leads us on to greater experiences? Is it leaders on a soapbox, spouting rhetoric for the crowd? The advice of our elders? Or is it the actions of our people? The strength of our beliefs? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
Welcome to the final hour here on the Newsroom, Jumbo Africa. I'm Elvis Preslin.
I'm Kendall Makamati. Happy that it's Friday.
Oh yes, it's the final hour, of course, and the focus today is on the Police Minister, Fikile Mbalula, who has defended the action of the police for not arresting the Deputy Minister of Higher Education in time, a day after the incident that happened in a nightclub when he assaulted two women, and that's why we're conducting this poll.
We'd like you to get involved in the conversation. Did the Higher Education Deputy Minister, Mduduzi Manana, get preferential treatment?
Well, so far,
585 votes have come in, Elvis.
Yeah, 82% of you are saying yes, it did get preferential treatment, and only 18% says no. But you're also tweeting us. Jon Foster, Kendall, says.
He says his case is no different to that of the KFC guys. Both should be in jail.
This one from Nkutalo says he is spoiled while he's a criminal. Law of South Africa is just a joke. Those are some of your comments. Please keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue, but we'll also focus on the unethical conduct of some high-ranking officials, especially civil servants, and MPs in particular.
Yeah. Now, we want to find out from you once again, bring you into the conversation, share your views with us. Should members of parliament be held to a higher ethical standard than ordinary citizens, is our question to you.
This one from Collins Ntelele says, didn't they familiarize themselves with the requirements for the job?
Romiochi says, who are they without ordinary citizens?
Yes, and of course, besides just the politics and of course ethical behavior, we're also focusing on sport. It was a close call.
It was a close call for Wade van Niekerk, who just made silver in last night's 200-meter final at the IWF World Championships. Now, we've been asking you today to share your views on his performances, and some have come out and said, you know what, maybe he didn't take it seriously, maybe he shouldn't have been running it, but you know what, we've got reactions from Wade van Niekerk straight after the race, just a few seconds, to share with you so you can see just how big this was for him. Let's have a listen.
I saw your reaction when you saw you'd won the silver. There seemed to be great delight, and that's some achievement.
Yeah, I mean, I've
Okay, now if you ever doubted Wade Dreamer's dedication and his involvement in his sport.
And his passion for the sport, and of course that 200 meters, very important for him because it would have meant that he had a double in the back.
I don't know.
But you're also tweeting us on that subject because we're asking you about his performance.
Now, I think we're going to leave it at that moment and leave it with that and just go straight to headlines. Just leave you with that moment. Let it sink in.
The nephew of the late struggle icon and former Justice Minister Dalla Omar has reportedly been shot and killed in an apparent attempted hijacking incident in Cape Town last night. The ratings agency Moody's will again announce a review of South Africa's credit rating today. And President Jacob Zuma hosts the Liberian president, the only woman president on the African continent, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who's on a state visit to South Africa. Those are all your headlines. Before we get there, let's find out from Kendall what's happening on the sports front.
Elvis, thank you very much. Good morning to you. This is what we have for you in the sports today.
And now Van Niekerk trying to come through. It's really tight. Richards coming. Guliev and Van Niekerk. It's so close. Guliev.
Usain Bolt's heir apparent Wade van Niekerk steps up to claim the mantle as he storms to silver in the men's 200 meters, narrowly missing out on a rare double at the IWF Championships.
Van Niekerk has been given second place in exactly the same time as Richards. So by 200ths of a second, the great South African doesn't follow Michael Johnson's double. It's a brilliant performance for the silver, but Guliev somehow held his nerve as they all closed around him.
After BC talks of one of the possible coaches to take over from Russell Domingo, England bowling coach Otis Gibson.
Because I don't know Otis, I've never worked with him. Try and find out something at least about your possible new coach.
Now, speaking of coaches, former Springbok captain Victor Matfield has been appointed as the Golden Lions Currie Cup forwards coach. I'll have more detail on these as well as other stories at 11:35. Do stay with us. Elvis has got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. The nephew of the late struggle icon and former Justice Minister Dalla Omar has reportedly been shot and killed in an apparent attempted hijacking incident near Ottery in Cape Town last night. The incident allegedly occurred at the corner of Governor Mbeki and Jan Smuts Drive. Shahid Omar died on the scene. The family confirmed the incident but refused to speak to the media, asking for privacy and space for bereavement. The police spokesperson says that the victim was shot in the chest by unknown suspects. His mother was also in the vehicle. Ratings agency Moody's is today expected to announce a review of South Africa's credit rating. Economists expect Moody's to affirm the Baa3 rating for the country and to retain the negative outlook. The rating agency is expected to first assess the medium-term budget policy statement in October and possibly the outcome of the ANC elective conference in December in terms of economic policy direction before further ratings action is taken. Fitch and Standard & Poor's have downgraded South Africa's credit rating to junk status. Moody's still has South Africa one notch above junk. Former KwaZulu-Natal ANC chairperson Senzo Mchunu has called on delegates to the party's conference in December to elect the deputy president Cyril Ramaphosa as the president. Mchunu was addressing a Young Communist League gathering in Umzitu in KZN's south coast. He said the party was facing a myriad of challenges under the president Jacob Zuma.
A warm welcome for the former KwaZulu-Natal ANC chairperson. This region has recently been stripped of its powers by the provincial ANC leadership. It's believed this was done in order to weaken branches suspected to be supporting Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa. But allegations were disputed by the provincial leadership. Mchunu did not mince his words on who members should support at the elective conference in December.
Let us not go there and look for a female president or a male president. Some so keta mongameli. Yabona ke abanye bethu njengami nje. Kholelwa kakhulu ukuthi umongameli ofanele sikhulume simsupport. Umuntu ofanele simphakamise simsupport. Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa.
Mchunu also called for the isolation of those destroying the party, saying it was worrying that allegations of state capture remain unchallenged.
Abantu abala nabakuma email abayenkantolo basinje ke baphike nje noma abe umuntu uyazi ukuthi khona ana kodwa ke uphika nje kwenze ukuthi singalimali kwasalimali salimali impela.
He also called for a speedy probe into state capture.
Umongameli uZuma wenza into esimsupportayo kuyona ukuthi amemezele ukuthi kuzoba ne-Judicial Commission of Inquiry ukuthi kuphenywe zonke lezi bonke laba bantu abathinteka la bonke laba bantu abathintwa ama-email yonke into eyi-corruption izophela. Siyayisapota leyo. Kuphela nje ukuthi siyacela nje ukuthi isheshe.
Mchunu urged ANC branch members to unite and fight gatekeeping ahead of the party elective conference. Simpiwe Makanya, SABC News, Umzinto.
Parliament says it's impossible to identify ANC members of Parliament who voted in support of the opposition party's motion of a no confidence in President Jacob Zuma. The institution says the ballot papers are under lock and key.
For what and why? That's the question the ANC caucus is asking itself. This as dozens of ANC MPs appear to have voted in favor to remove President Zuma.
The intention is not to chase anyone. The intention is not a witch hunt, but the intention is to know why was there the outcomes that we had.
But Parliament says the ballot papers cannot be linked to any MP.
There are no identification features on the ballot paper. Each ballot paper has got simple question with 3 options: no, yes, or abstain, and together with a stamp for authenticity. That's all that is on the ballot paper.
Small Business Development Minister Lindiwe Zulu has described those who voted against the party line as ill-disciplined. But fellow Human Settlements Minister Lindiwe Sisulu disagrees.
Everybody in the ANC has a conscience and should exercise their conscience when they vote. That was granted to us by the courts. It was also consented to by the Speaker, and we all voted with our conscience.
The ANC caucus has dismissed the list of MPs circulating on social media, purportedly indicating which MPs who voted in favor of the motion. The party says the list includes people who are no longer MPs. Ulelani Philip, SABC News, Parliament.
Neither the dissolution of Parliament nor a significant number of MP resignations is likely to ensure early elections. Now, some political analysts and most political parties reject the idea out of hand. The DA tabled motion for Parliament to be dissolved.
The Democratic Alliance believes elections in the current political climate will benefit opposition parties. Other opposition parties disagree.
We can't support such a motion. We believe that it's not opportune to dissolve Parliament, and that would one would have to contemplate resources with regard to dissolving Parliament. Parties, I don't believe that at this juncture political parties are ready to go for the election.
We also run the risk of making a very grave error here, that if we allow ourselves to turn every issue, every political disagreement into a vicious fight for political power, that we might end up reducing this very important institution, Parliament, and its work into a bon double.
COPE, the AIC, the FF Plus and the IFP also don't like the idea. The EFF calls it an opportunistic move. The party says when it made a similar suggestion previously, the DA wouldn't support it. The EFF is challenging the DA to resign en masse. Kasak says this is unlikely to make a difference.
So long as there are 200 members of Parliament, Parliament will be able to continue to function. We know that the ANC have 249 members, so a mass resignation will not affect the functioning of Parliament.
While decisions needing a two-thirds majority won't be allowed, ordinary legislation only needs the majority of MPs present. Abra Barbia, SABC News, Parliament.
Meanwhile, the police minister, Vakile Mbalula, has defended the action of the police who failed to arrest the Deputy Minister of Higher Education, Mduduzi Manana, before his court appearance. Authorities say that Manana handed himself over to police at the Douglasdale police station. This while the office of the president remains tight-lipped about the deputy minister's fate.
Police Minister Fikile Mbalula wants the law to take its course, even if it's against his colleague and friend Mduduzi Manana.
And I can assure you that Deputy Minister Mdu Manana will not be treated with special kid gloves, and then will face the full wrath of the law in relation to the reported crimes.
Mbalula, however, refused to be drawn into whether his colleague should be suspended or even dismissed now that he has been charged and granted bail of 5,000 rand.
The question which relate to anybody in that position, it's a matter that will be responded to by the presidency. I can't respond to that.
The office of the president could not be reached for comment. Lukhanyo Khalada, SABC News, Parliament.
And therefore, the reason that we raise this question today in our poll and even in our question, let's go to the poll and let's take a look at the numbers there. We're asking you the question, did the Deputy Minister of Higher Education, Mduduzi Manana, get that preferential treatment? So far, we have 598, so almost 600 votes in, and 82% of you are saying yes, he did get preferential treatment. Only 18% disagree. Let's take a look at what you are tweeting us. This one from Mahafa Noel says, definitely. And this will anger the public one day to a point where they cause public violence in future. It should be corrected in time. It should be correct in time, he says. That's IG. Magrob says it has become the standard and norm in South Africa. Money rules. Those are some of your comments. Please keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. But we're also asking you, of course, the question. And the question relates to ethics in relation to members of Parliament. There it is on your screen right now. And should members of Parliament be held to a higher ethical standard than you and me as ordinary South Africans? Let's take a look at what you are telling us on the Twitter handle. This one coming from Billion Malautsi says, South Africa doesn't have leadership. We have criminals, even though they are doing wrong to them is right because we don't have money to challenge them. This one from One Take says, if assaulted someone and there was a video, I would be in jail, in a jail cell right now. Manana is a celebrity, says One Take says. Yes, those are your thoughts on the matter, and of course you can keep them coming. But big day today. President Jacob Zuma is currently hosting the Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who is on a state visit to South Africa, the first woman president in Africa. The visit is aimed at boosting the economic growth and cooperation between the two countries and will further contribute to strengthening inter-trade relations on the continent of Africa. South Africa and Liberia enjoy good diplomatic and political relations since the attainment of freedom and democracy in South Africa. The two countries have signed a General Cooperation Agreement and the Memorandum of Understanding on Economic and Technical Cooperation. We will see if we can cross to the event a little bit later to find out what is happening there. But meanwhile, SABC News caught up with the presidential spokesperson, Dr. Bongani Nkulunga, on the significance of the visit, and this is what he had to say.
This is a historic state visit. As you know, the president of Liberia is the first female president in the African continent. She has been elected twice. This is the final days of her last term in office. So this visit, President Zuma thought she should come in August because this is a Women's Month in South Africa to celebrate her achievement and the achievement that have been made in the African continent, including South Africa, in promoting women's rights and making sure that women participate in all levels of society. And in her case, she has really occupied the highest, most position in Liberia, and she has been participating in all the structures of the African continent, especially the AU. You remember that the relations between South Africa and Liberia are long-standing. Former President Nelson Mandela went to Liberia in 1962 to seek support in the fight against apartheid in South Africa. We resumed our diplomatic relations in 1997, and they have grown in leaps and bounds since 1997. And so today, this historic visit by the president of Liberia is to strengthen diplomatic relations between the two countries, first and foremost, especially in the economic sphere. There is an expectation that there will be a joint agreement to promote trade and investment that is going to be signed. There will also be an agreement signed to promote movement between Liberia and South Africa, especially of diplomats. There will be elections in Liberia, presidential and legislative elections in the next few months. There is an expectation that South Africa, through the Independent Electoral Commission, will provide assistance there. And so it is a very important visit. Just in the economic sphere, just to go back, I mean, the trade relations between the two countries support South Africa. So the discussions between the two presidents will look at what can be done to make sure that Liberia benefits more from its trade relations with South Africa. So it is a very important visit indeed.
We'll bring you more on that a little bit later. Now, approached by the McGowan family in 2015 to assist them in bringing back their son Stephen, Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman, the director of humanitarian organization Gift of the Givers, intervened. Suleiman and chief negotiator Mohammed Hia would spend countless hours over the past 2 years working to get Stephen freed by appealing to the militants' humanity in releasing McGowan on compassionate grounds. SAB News reporter Nozin Tombimia spoke to Dr. Suleiman on the trial and tribulations that he faced in bringing back Stephen McGowan.
The man who was instrumental in helping Stephen McGowan to be released from the Al-Qaeda militant camp where he was held captive for over 6 years is Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman, and he joins us here this afternoon. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Doctor. It's been a long 2 years that you've been involved in this particular release program.
Yes, it's been tough, both for the negotiator and for the family, and it required thinking in many ways, but we're very grateful that the 2 years are over. We say 2 years because we only got involved 2 years ago when the father came to us. But for Stephen, it's almost 6 years.
And how did the father come and approach you? He did speak briefly about it in the press briefing, but for you, how did he come and approach you?
When we released Yolandi Koki in January 2014, Malcolm McGowan came to me. He spoke to me and I met him. He said, look, here's pictures of my son. I'm stuck. We're making no progress, we're making no headway. Can you help us? But he said, I know you're busy negotiating for Pierre Koki, so I don't want to come in the way of Yolandi's husband. In June 2015, I saw the proof of life video of Stephen, and I called Malcolm. I said, Malcolm, this video is telling us the captors want to talk to somebody. I'll take the case. And that's how it started.
It must have been such an amazing experience for you to finally have Stephen out and to see him here speaking to his family, addressing the media.
Well, that's the most important part, speaking to his family, because I witnessed the suffering of his family for 2 whole years. I've seen the father and I've seen the mother. I've seen Baby McGowan, and the first 5 months of this year was very difficult, because I'm a medical doctor and I could see how she was going down at each month, and I kept on saying, is this lady going to make it? Is this lady going to make it? And I hope we can get Stephen out before something happens to this lady. But it was not to be. 27th of May, she was gone.
So where to from now? You've built these strong relationships with the Al-Qaeda and the region of Mali. Where to next for you?
Some of the other governments have already spoken to us. They said, look, what's the process? And we said, look, we've given you the process, what can be done? And we said, in the end, like we told the Swedish government, through the family, and we told the South African government, we told the Australian government the same thing. In the end, it's in your hand. We can take it to a certain point, but finally it's to be done by you.
And this story, it's a story of triumph. What message does this send to South Africans at large that they can overcome adversity?
Well, Stephen said it. South Africans stood with him. We got messages like he got. People in the malls, in the street, in the road were greeting us. How's McGowan? And you know what's the best part about it? We spend so much of time creating racial differences and making the racial divide and making issues. The amount of black people that ask me, my brother, how's Stephen? Are we getting him out? He's South African. We must get him home. He's our brother. I mean, such a fantastic feeling. South Africans stood with us. The media stood with us. And even the government. We had dialogue all the time. We were in talks for 2 years, both with different departments in government. And they were also committed to bring Stephen home. So it was a great feeling. So South Africans, we can do it together. We don't need a story like this to bring us together. Let's stand together under normal situations to do the best for each other and for the country.
Thank you so much, Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman, giving us a message of hope, a story of hope, of triumph, that Stephen McGowan, after 6 years, kidnapped by Al-Qaeda militants in Mali.
Story of triumph indeed. Now, 4 people were killed overnight in sporadic violence and 2 others were shot by police in election-related violence in Nairobi in Kenya. This follows protests as the country awaits election results. The opposition has declared Raila Odinga the winner of the presidential election. But international observers in the year's presidential election says that the country's electoral process this far is credible and have urged for patience as the vote tallying continues. Observer Mission said they had not seen any signs that the electronic tallying system had been manipulated to slant the results in favor of the incumbent Uhuru Kenyatta. Opposition leader Raila Odinga has disputed the results, indicating that he is in the lead.
Singing from the same hymn book, the men and women sent to be the eyes and ears of the international community.
And indeed, it would be very regrettable if there was anything that emerged afterwards which sought to corrupt that outcome, to spoil that outcome.
Our overall conclusion is that the opening, voting, closing, and counting process at the polling stations on 8 August 2017 were credible, transparent, and inclusive.
They applauded the Commission for a job well done and called on Kenya's political leaders to exercise restraint as the results trickle in.
If that process concludes and the IEBC declare a winner, anybody who has a grievance knows what he should do. No Kenyan blood must be shed because somebody is aggrieved with the electoral process.
But even as the opposition leader, Raila Odinga, cried foul over alleged hacking of the Electoral Commission systems, they said the backup system will ensure the credibility of the process.
It is the paper ballots and the accounting process established by the IEBC that tell the story of this election, not the electronic transmission of those numbers.
And a call for calm.
It's time for Africa to put behind the times and the days where every election would put fear in everybody. Election is not about, struggle. It should be actually a good moment for democracy.
The top candidates in these elections have very important voices to their bases, and we urge them to use it to take their responsibility and show leadership in an ongoing manner.
Tallying is still underway, and all eyes will continue to be on Kenya to see who will be Kenya's next president. Sarah Kimani, SABC News, Kenya.
Well, still in Kenya, the country remains on tenterhooks as it awaits the presidential election results. The National Super Alliance, that's the opposition, maintains the results of the elections have been altered and there are anomalies. The electoral body, the IEBC, is yet to declare the final results.
It was an 8-hour-long wait for journalists. The question on everyone's lips, whether Raila Odinga will concede defeat. But NASA arrived to declare victory.
We demand that the IEBC chairperson announce the presidential election results forthwith and declare the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga and His Excellency Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka as the duly elected President and Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, respectively.
Throughout the said victor, Raila Odinga did not speak. According to NASA, Odinga secured 8 million votes while Uhuru Kenyatta trailed behind with 7 million votes. The alliance says it has received supporting documents from an IEBC source whom they refuse to name.
I'm sorry, that's unfortunate that you're saying that this is a rumor. I think you're being unreasonable there, because you cannot jump to the conclusion that my statement is a rumor. I'm trying to respond. All right? So the question is that when we are told at the appropriate time whether it is within a court of law, then we shall present our evidence.
NASA says it has penned a letter to the IEBC chair to look into the claims. The alliance maintains the system was hacked, although the electoral body has disputed this. The leading party, according to the IEBC results, Jubilee, is lost for words.
I don't know what to say. It's just laughable, maybe infantile, because there's only one institution which constitutionally is mandated to declare results. Of course, we do have our own tallying, and so we do have our own results. It would be nice if we could be allowed to announce those ones and stop wasting everybody's time. We just go home. But there is a law to be followed, and we have to live by the law.
Although NASA has called on Kenyans to remain calm, there are fears that the refusal to accept the election results could spark outbreaks of violence.
Those remarks are made with the purpose of inciting their support base and to make their support base have no confidence in the final results when they're announced. Because I think that it is common sense that given the figures that we're seeing in our TV screens, they most probably have lost.
Meanwhile, police remain on high alert as the spotlight is on the IEBC, which is expected to announce the results this weekend. Aldrin Simpier, SABC News, Nairobi, Kenya.
We'll keep you updated here on the newsroom on those very important results in Kenya, so you have to stay tuned. But right now, we'll take a break and be right back after that.
What guides us? What leads us forward? Is it the advice of our elders? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
Hello and a warm welcome to PM News, and we're broadcasting live from Johannesburg.
4 decades later, the family is still seeking closure.
We need the truth, and the truth must be told.
Children often go undiagnosed because they are hidden away. About 1 million people in South Africa live with autism.
Creative recycling at play.
Music has been around forever. I just had to find a new, fresh way to put, and a new spin to put on it. So I decided, why not recycled cans?
Stay tuned to PM News for all your news updates every Saturday and Sunday from 1500 hours.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, this week, the Minister of Women, Susan Chabangu, used Women's Day to point fingers at some cabinet ministers who've been exposed about their bad behavior towards especially women. Now, speaking at the official Women's Day celebration in Kimberley, she fingered the Deputy Minister of Higher Education, Mr. Mduduzi Manana, and said that he should be held accountable for his actions. Now, however, he's not the first or the only office bearer to be in hot water regarding questionable behavior in public. And we need to mention that he is innocent until the courts of this country rule otherwise. So let's not prejudge it. But in general, what sanctions should be meted out to office bearers who are found wanting when it comes to public behavior? Now, to discuss this, well, we're fortunate to have the right person. The co-chairperson of Parliament's Joint Committee on Ethics, Mr. Amos Masondo, is with us this morning. Very good morning to you, sir.
Morning to you and all the viewers.
The first question I want to ask you is the conduct of our office bearers here in South Africa. It should be beyond reproach, isn't it? But is it?
Well, that's the standard, really, that all of us must behave in a manner that is in keeping with the Constitution, with the relevant legislation, as well as with the code of conduct. So that's the standard, that all of us must do everything to do what the law says we should do, what the code says we should do, and do nothing that undermines that.
I want to talk about the specific case, of course, the one that's been in the headlines this whole week, and it's Women's Month, and it's been Women's Day, and some of our parliamentarians have spoken openly about it. Of course, we can't prejudge the case of Deputy Minister Mduduzi Manana, but how do you view, as the Ethics Committee, how do you view ministers being in nightclubs at all hours of the morning, engaging in what some would call questioning behavior, never mind the case of assault?
Now, I guess what is important is we should always endeavor to do the correct thing. And by correct thing, as I've indicated, it's really the law of the land and the code that we've all agreed to. So the question of people straying, which will happen from time to time, as it happens anywhere elsewhere in the world, need to be managed in a way that ensures that as we deal with issues of discipline, we are seen to be fair. We are seen to be fair, and we are seen to be consistent. So this is what in the committee we try to do all the time.
Are our office bearers and our leaders, are they expected to behave in a manner that sets an example to the public and especially young people in South Africa?
Yeah, well, leadership has got to be carried out in a way that suggests integrity, that suggests honesty, that suggests that we strive to be role models.
We all make mistakes. It's human to make mistakes, and we all occasionally step out of line. I myself have made mistakes in my time. When you step out of line as an office bearer, a member of parliament, and you become accountable, what is that process of accountability that you have, and how do you then help these leaders to, I don't know, to find the right way?
Our approach really is that of seeking to avoid coming across as being punitive and coming across as seeking to persecute members of parliament. We try the best to ensure that we guide members, we advise them, and that we arrive at a situation where all of us are of one mind in terms of what needs to be done and in terms of really doing the work that we're supposed to do.
If you are a serial offender, if you're seen as somebody who breaches the ethical code regularly, what do you then do?
Well, there are people who become serial offenders, but they're not that many, and it's not that common. But clearly, if people step out of line and show a tendency to do so continuously, then they need to be dealt with in a way that ensures that action that is taken is seen as being fair, but firm. Firm to send messages, or a clear message to all concerned that indeed wayward behavior will not be tolerated.
Now, Mr. Masonda, our nation is becoming younger, and constantly they're out there calling for younger leaders, but with younger leaders come younger behavior. How do you manage this balancing act between younger leaders and younger behavior, because younger men and women are going to be maybe out a little bit later and have younger friends and engage in younger behavior, if we can call it that?
I don't want to speak in absolute terms and suggest that all young people are bad, or all older people are not suitable for this or that position. But we have to ensure, as you are correctly pointing out, indirectly, that there is a balance. And that balance is really to ensure that while the exuberance and energy of youth is acknowledged, but that it is also somewhat contained, but not in a way that seeks to stifle, to control, and to suppress. And we need to really ensure that happens, because if this energy, exuberance and energy is left unchecked, it can do a lot of damage.
And in today's world, society, in the social media world, everywhere is a camera. It makes it a little bit more difficult, I would think, to be an office bearer, because everything is in the media, isn't it?
Yeah, everything's out there within seconds. The story that happens in one particular location or area is spread across society, and indeed people generally have access to social media, etc.
In conclusion, sir, are you happy with the general example that our parliamentarians especially are setting to the public?
I think to be fair, the overwhelming majority of public representatives are doing the best they can. There's, however, strain, and that is public. And we need more renewal. We need more corrective measures to ensure that the situation becomes better than what it is at the moment.
Mr. Masondo, thank you very much for coming in today. I know it's a difficult job at times. I'm sure people make out like you're a policeman in Parliament, but that's not the case.
I think winter is definitely one of those seasons where you can really show off your sartorial choices. You can start from a single layer of a shirt, actually starting with thermals, build it up with the shirts. You can have beautiful knits over the shirts, like we've done with Jay.
This film tells the story of a very, very significant political figure in the struggle for freedom in South Africa, who happened to be a woman. She was Nelson Mandela's wife.
The exhibition is an exploration into black femininity. Tabitha is a woman of colour, and she is exploring the historical exploitation of the black female body.
Newtown Junction Mall hosted an epic contest in the cold where 3 top South African graffiti artists battled it out for the opportunity to become the Newtown Graffiti Face-Off Master.
For your weekly dose of entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
Right, welcome back. My name is Kendall Makama. The time has just hit just before 16 minutes to midday. And instead of doing sports, we're going to bring you breaking news and news that's happening right now, where Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta is set to brief the media shortly. This will be his first appearance since the election that was held in his nation, his East African nation. Let's now cross live to proceedings out in Kenya. Well, it seems like that crossing is not quite ready, which gives us time for a little bit of sports. We'll wait for Nike, crowned the greatest, yet most challenging week of his career with a silver medal at the 200 meters in the IAAF World Championships in England last night. He clocked 20.11 seconds as was pipped to the line by unheralded Turkish athlete Ramil Guliev by 0.02 seconds. Trinidad and Tobago's Jerome Richards took bronze.
Van Niekerk, the new poster boy of world athletics.
Van Niekerk held a good start as he showcased his strength by taking the lead of the band.
Cleanly away in this huge final. What an opportunity. Sonny Brown is trying to close down on Webb outside him.
And he seemed to have the gold medal in the bag. He led for the better part of the race before the Turkish sprinter put in an extra burst and dipped ahead of him.
It's so close. Guliev is very, very tight. I think Guliev might well have just done it. The great South African doesn't follow Michael Johnson's double. It's a brilliant performance for the silver.
Botswana's Isaac Makwala was also quick out of the blocks, but finished 6th.
I knew it was going to be very difficult, especially with both the 400-meter finals and 200-meter semi-finals. I was quite physically and emotionally drained, and it was very difficult. I had to dig deep today. I got a spark of motivation today, and I'm glad that it came through.
Van Niekerk's 200 meters silver takes South Africa's medals haul at the championships to 5, with Caster Semenya still to compete in the 800 meters event, a race she has dominated for the last 2 years.
Representing South Africa, Caster Semenya.
The 26-year-old advanced easily to the semi-finals of the event after winning her first round hit last night. Semenya is attempting an audacious double as she already has a bronze medal in the 1,500 meters. She will be joined in the semis by Gina Lofstrand, who sneaked in as the fastest loser. The semi-finals will start at 8:35 South African time tonight. Mtutuzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
Now, the South African national football team is putting the final touches to its preparations for their 2018 African Nations Championship qualifier against Zambia this coming weekend. The teams will clash in East London at the Buffalo City Stadium on Saturday, with kickoff scheduled for 3 p.m. Bafana played to a goalless draw in East London earlier this year against Angola.
The home team is hard at work preparing for the much anticipated clash. This is the first leg of the Chen tie against Zambia. Bafana is going all out to win, but the coaching staff has found it difficult to put a side together. Coach Stuart Baxter says he had to improvise as local teams are preparing for the season, starting with MTN 8 this weekend.
We've had people come into camp and then leaving, and people that are on camp but they can't stay for the second game. And yeah, it's been, and I understand the clubs. I'm not criticising them. I'm just saying that this tournament at this time for South Africa is a very, very, very difficult one. So the boys that have been here have worked their socks off, so they're going to give whatever they can. But logistically, to answer your question, as a tournament, it's been the most difficult I've ever experienced.
Tickets are selling at 40 Rand, and the team is hoping for a full stadium of local support. The return leg will be played in Zambia next week. Olani Sichinga, SABC News, East London.
Now, the Proteas arrived back in country after a long summer in England, licking their wounds with nothing but an unsuccessful Champions Trophy campaign and then defeats, and the most recent a 3-1 defeat in the Test series to England to show for their efforts. Current England bowling coach Otis Gibson is earmarked to become the next pro coach of the Proteas, and Captain Faf du Plessis gave his opinions on what he knows about Gibson. He also did talk a little bit about life without AB de Villiers.
As far as we know, that's been told to us that the decision has been made by the coaching panel, and they've chosen Otis Gibson as their recommendation, and that now that goes to the board, and then the board decides whether they want to use that recommendation or not. So we don't know what's going on further than that. For me, it was important to try and, because I don't know Otis, I've never worked with him, try and find out something at least about your possible new coach. So I actually spoke to a few of the West Indian players because he was their coach there, and then spoke to the English guys about him being their bowling coach and their thoughts on him. Obviously there was maybe 1 or 2 differences in opinion, but I think from a culture point of view, probably we are a little bit more closer to the English players, the way we play our cricket, than the West Indian culture would be. And the comments were positive. You know, I spoke to Ben Stokes, who I play with at Pune, and he said he's a really good bowling coach. Not sure what he will be like as a head coach, but he's a very, very good bowling coach. And other guy I spoke to was Aaron Morgan, just from a captaincy point of view. How does he find working with him? And also he said he was really good and he was a good guy. And I think for a start, that's probably the most important thing, is that you appoint someone that's a really good person, because that's ideally what our culture is all about.
Yeah, I mean, I know Otis quite well. Played in England in some leagues where he was the pro as well, and obviously watched him quite closely how he's working with the England bowlers. I think you know, different sort of skill set. I think if you look at the way the England bowlers are using the crease, different wrist positions, you know, that sort of things that is going to come to our camp now, and especially a lot of the youngsters and me, you know, can learn from that and benefit from that. As my personal sort of future, you know, look, I'm committed to the Proteas, and for me, that's the most important thing. I mean, we now are a little bit in a, if I can say, we use the word slump, and it's important for our senior players now to stick together and, you know, help the youngsters and help the team to get back to the spot with the public, and, you know, where everybody can be proud of us.
Whether we win or lose, people always want AB to play, and that's fair, because for me he is the best player in the team. But I think we've played, I mean, probably a year and a half now of Test cricket where AB hasn't played, and I personally, like I said, I hope that he comes back and plays, but I am not expecting. I've almost sort of moved on and made sure that we can find someone else to fulfill that role, and that's why we're looking at guys who can fill that number 4 position. If AB was there, he could just basically put on the shoes and go straight into bat. But it's just for me to try and get it out there that people must expect that it's possibly not going to happen. We don't want to lie about it or anything. If AB's not coming back, then he's not coming back. But I can't make that answer for AB. The last time I spoke to AB, he wasn't keen to play yet again. So from my point of view, I'm just expecting him not to come back.
And so it is. We come to the end of an exciting week in sports, and nothing more as exciting as what's been happening at the IWF World Championships. Wait for Nika. Didn't quite get it, but he did get it. That double that he was looking for at the championships, he got his gold, got his silver. 6 races, 6 days. Wait for Nika really is the king that needs to be recognized. Now, after his race, he was caught by members of the media, and they wanted to find out from him exactly how it is he felt after that race. I'm going to say goodbye to you, see you next week, and leave you with 15 seconds of raw emotion.
I saw your reaction when you saw you'd won the silver. There seemed to be great delight, and that's some achievement.
Yeah, I mean,